There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am to talk about the 2022 new releases coming out in 2022 that I'm looking forward to. Now last year I was comparatively rich, so I had pre-ordered all the ones I talked about. This year I haven't pre-ordered any of them. So now you know what to get for me for my birthday. But so I don't know whether I'm actually going to buy these or I don't know. But they're books I'm interested in. Let's leave it at that. This is actually my second try to make this video. I wasn't happy with the way the first one turned out. Just different things, camera angle, and I had spent half the video with my head down like this, and all you could see in the camera was my bald head. And you know, it's pretty sexy, but you know, you don't want to look at that for 40 minutes, do you? Let me know in the comments if you do. So, for this second try, I'm going to focus on, and I also thought, you know, I talked about a lot of the books that half of the rest of BookTube will be talking about when they make these videos. So, you know, all 12 of you that watch my channel regularly know that I tend to specialize in books off the beaten track, the more obscure ones. So I'm going to focus on those. I'm going to talk about the three that probably a lot of other booktubers are also excited about, but just very briefly. And one of them is the new novel by Douglas Stuart. And you know what? For this video, I'm not going to mention publication dates. You can click on the Goodreads links I'm going to have in the show notes. But that publication date is for somewhere in the world, not necessarily where you live. So I'm just going to ignore. They're all supposedly coming out in 2022. Do the rest of the research yourself. I'm not here to talk about publication dates. I've got more important things to tell you about. But one of the ones that, of course, me and 3/4 of BookTube are really excited about is the new Douglas Stuart novel, Young Mungo. Comes out somewhere in before spring or in the spring. Here is the American cover, and here is the UK cover. And for once in my life, I actually much prefer the American cover. So I will be waiting to acquire that hardcover. It's one of the few hardcover books that I will definitely, that I know that I will shell out the money to get, because, you know, it's Douglas Stuart, the author of Shuggie Bain, and this one is getting, the early reviews are fantastic, so I'm really excited about that. The other main one that I'm really excited about, and I didn't find out until after I had filmed the first try for this video, so another reason to do the whole thing over again, is Anthony Marra has a new novel coming out. It's called Mercury Pictures Presents. The epic tale of a woman who starts out in fascist Italy and goes to 1940s Hollywood. So very different. It's an American story, or certainly part of it's in America. That's very unlike his other two books. The other one that I'll maybe spend a couple minutes talking about is NoViolet Bulawayo's novel, which I do feel a little bit like Charlie Brown with Lucy and the Football, because this one was supposed to come out 2 years ago. I did a video like this, and it never materialized. But this time it has a publication date, it has a cover, which I think is quite fabulous, and a title and a synopsis. So here it is, but I'm a little bit nervous about it because it's told through animal characters. But if anybody can break my allergy to talking animals, shit like that in my fiction, it might be NoViolet Bulawayo, because I absolutely loved her novel, We Need New Names. Colonialism and with talking animals in a bloody war of liberation. So I'm certainly excited about it. I'm also nervous that it might not be for me, but I am a huge NoViolet Bulawayo fan, so I'm also excited that Akwaeke Emezi has another novel. I loved Freshwater, hated the Vivek Oji one, so this one is going to be the tiebreaker, and it is called You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, which is, you know, certainly a contender for my favorite title of the year. That's all I'll say about that. Other writers that I have read and enjoyed stuff by them in the past, and I'm just going to do these really quickly so I can get to the obscure, weird shit that you're all here to really see on my channel. I'm looking forward to Mieko Kawakami's third novel to be translated, All the Lovers in the Night, translated by the same dudes, Sam, Bett, and David Boyd. I haven't read her second one, that came out last year. Ariana Harwicz has one coming out. Apparently the other two books, Die My Love and Feeble Minded, were part of a trilogy. Who knew? And this is the third one. Allie Smith has one coming out called Companion Piece. The cover is gorgeous. It looks like it should be connected to the seasonal quartet, but it's not. I'm kind of hit and miss with her too, but I certainly want to check it out. Patrick Gale has a new novel called Mother's Boy, and what I've read of his, I've enjoyed, but I've got other novels of his on the shelf, so whether I get to it or not, but it's called Mother's Boy. Yūko Tsushima has a collection of short fiction coming out, reissued by NYRB Books. Her translator is the late lamented Geraldine Harcourt. But to be honest, I read one of those penguin little pale blue jobbies, those short little ones, and it was 3 stories by her, and they were awful. And they were same translator, so I'm a little bit nervous about that one too. Wendy Erskine, I read her debut collection of short stories, an Irish short story writer, about 2 years ago, and this is her second collection, Dance Move. Lucy Caldwell has a new novel coming out. I haven't read a Lucy Caldwell novel, but her collection of short fiction, Multitudes, was one of the best short story collections, certainly, and contained the best short story called Poison that I read last year, so that one is on my radar. I have also read a collection of short stories by the Irish writer Bernard MacLaverty, and he has a new one coming out called Blank Pages and Other Stories. Curious about that one. And the Omani author, Jokha Alharthi, has a second novel being translated into English, Bitter Orange Tree, same translator from the Arabic, Marilyn Booth. I really loved her first translated novel, Celestial Bodies. So those are the ones that are by writers that I have read something and liked in the past. And now let's get to the stuff that I know absolutely nothing about. Here is one from Tibet. We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies. Lovely title, lovely cover by Tsering Yangzom Lama. And there is no translator mentioned on Goodreads. It's a debut, a Tibetan's family 50-year journey through exile and their struggles to forge new lives. So maybe it was written in English. Now, I want to know a lot more about Tibet because China is the most evil country in the world. I can't wait for their lovely Chinese citizenry to rise up and overthrow that murderous, horrific regime. A big reason for my hatred is what they've done to Tibet. So that one sounds good. Here is a novel called A Strange Woman by Leylâ Erbil, translated by Nermin, Menemencioğlu, and Amy Marie Spangler. It's translated from the Turkish, and there's not a damn thing on Goodreads, so I'll just leave it at that. I've read almost nothing, or maybe nothing from Turkey, so this one was interesting to me for that. Here is a memoir by a Uyghur, the other reason why China is evil incarnate. This is How I Survived a Chinese quote-unquote re-education camp, a Uyghur woman's story by Wilbahar Haitiwaji. And also the co-author is Rosen Morgat, and the translator is Edward Galvin. And we all know about the Uyghurs, and it's actually, we don't know enough about the Uyghurs, but I thought this would be a good way for me to remedy that for myself. Here's a novel from India, The Immortal King Rao by Vauhini Vara. It's from the perspective of King Rao's daughter. And it's not a realistic novel. Might be good for me to try, but I didn't think I noticed that till right this minute. Through biotechnological innovation, he has given her his memories. Oh, but his Dalit childhood on an Indian coconut plantation in the 1950s is as alive to her as it was to him. Okay, I'm not so sure about the non-realistic thing, but, it's good for me to move outside my comfort zone. Certainly sounds interesting. Phenotypes is a Brazilian novel by Paulo Scott, translated by Daniel Hahn, and it's about 2 brothers. Their father is black, a famous forensic pathologist, if that such a thing exists, as a famous forensic pathologist, and their mother is white. One of the brothers has more light skin, the other one doesn't, and so it's all about race and so on. That sounds fascinating. That's coming out from And Other Stories, and they publish good stuff, usually. It's a fabulous color. That was a Freudian slip. It's a fabulous color and a fabulous cover, I think. The Colony by Audrey McGee is an Irish novel written by a journalist, which doesn't always work out that well in my experience, but it's set on an island, and one is concerned with preserving his language, so maybe that's a Gaelic language or something, I don't know, and the other is a painter, and I can't make head nor tail out of the few sentences I've read because I don't like to read the synopsis, so you can check into it, but, my ears prick up whenever I hear new Irish fiction. This one has a great title, and I think I like the cover too. Down-Home Meal for These Difficult Times by Marin Hadero. I don't see a translator's name. And this is from Africa. It won some African writing prizes, and it's by an Ethiopian-American author. Okay, short stories. I'm in. Similarly, pretty interesting cover. I'm not sure I love the orange of it, but I love the illustration at the center of it. Yonder by Jabari Asim. Love and friendship between a group of enslaved black strivers in the mid-19th century. They call themselves the Stolen. Sounds interesting. Who is Jabari Asim? A black American writer I have never heard of, despite the fact that he's got a bunch of books out here. Got a bunch of nonfiction. Yeah, I have never heard of him, but this novel sounds pretty interesting. I am not sure if it's a novel. No, I think it's more maybe a blend of kind of autofictional. It's been compared to Sebald. It is called She Came from Mariupol by Natasha Woden, translated by Alfred Coopers, I believe from the German. And it's about the author's mother, who died when the author was 10 years old. So her daughter never learned about her mother's experiences during World War II. The mother and the father had come from the Ukraine and had gone into forced labor in Nazi Germany. And it's her research and what she discovers about her parents' lives, especially her mother's, apparently. She came from Mariupol. I will be having a bite-sized book chats about this next week, but it won't go up for a couple months because I have such a huge backlog. Let's see. When is it published? It's published in April. I'll make sure it's up before April, but I'm looking forward to it. Here is a Caribbean novel called Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I think that's quite a good cover. Debut novel, two estranged siblings who have to deal with each other at the time of their mother's death, involving traveling from the Caribbean to London to California. Vagabonds is a novel by Elagosa Osunde, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that is a Nigerian novel set in Lagos. And the characters are all vagabonds of one type or another, with the queer, the poor, the displaced, the footloose, and rogue spirits. Light of the Living Res by Morgan Talty. Morgan Talty is a man. Collection of short stories set in a native community in Maine. Sounds fantastic. Here is a nonfiction book. A gay nonfiction, I think memoir. Is it a memoir? Yep. Called Boys and Oil, Growing Up Gay in a Fractured Land by Taylor Rorby. His memoir about growing up in rural North Dakota, which is just underneath where I grew up in rural Saskatchewan. And this is a quote from the book. A place where there is no safety in a ravaged landscape of mining and fracking. And he is making an analogy between the destruction of the landscape and his own terror at being queer in that environment. Now that sounds like a Sean book. I think it sounds like a Greg book too. I wonder if it's in Greg's video. I know absolutely nothing about this writer, except that she is a feminist Moroccan writer. So what else would you need to know before deciding they needed this book in their lives? Blood Feast, the complete short stories of Malika Mustadrif, translated by Alice Guthrie. She's a cult feminist icon in contemporary Moroccan lit. All right. The Intangible by C.J. Washington, debut novel about a grieving mother. If I'm understanding the synopsis, miscarries but feels that she hasn't miscarried. It's a mysterious condition called pseudocyesis. C.J. Washington is a male writer of color. Lives in Atlanta. The Flames by Sophie Haydock. Set in Vienna at the beginning of the 20th century. A work of historical fiction that's revolving around Klimt and his protege, his scandalous protege, Egon Schiele, is that how you pronounce that? And there are 4 other characters that may be fictional characters, but it's told through their points of view. 50 Sounds, a memoir of language, learning, and longing by Polly Barton. That's a pretty nice cover. Oh, wait a minute. It says this is her debut? I'm sure she's had other stuff out. Oh, this is her debut. She's a translator from the Japanese. That's right. This is her debut. It's her memoir of moving to the Japanese island of Sado at the age of 21 and her journey to becoming a literary translator. Oh my god, that sounds fantastic! Sado Island is famous in Japanese history for there was a famous Buddhist priest or monk or thinker that was exiled there by one of the emperors because of his heresy or something. Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. Another debut. Coming-of-age story, meditation on illness and death. One of the narrative voices is her malevolent disease. That may or may not work for me, but it's a book that I would probably either love or hate, and probably one that I would wait to hear other people's reviews. I didn't mention this as being a book by an author I'd read before, because this is fiction, and it was a work of nonfiction of hers that I'd read and loved. Chelsea Vowell, Métis writer who lives in Canada, and her nonfiction guide to Indigenous issues in Canada is one of the best books I read last year, and certainly the most informative. That was called Indigenous Rights. This is a collection of Métis futurist stories called Buffalo is the New Buffalo. Speculative fiction about bringing back the buffalo. I'm not into speculative fiction or futurism. I read Binti and I quite liked it, but I thought, okay, one and done. I don't want to read any more. I mean, it's not my thing, but I will read anything Chelsea Vowell writes. So. Ancestor Trouble, A Reckoning and a Reconciliation by Maud Newton. It's about her uncovering the truth about her wild and crazy Southern family. And about culturally, our obsession with ancestors in general. And her family had all kinds of dramatic incidents. So, as a retired genealogist, I retired when I was about 18. That sounds interesting. It was more than a little remiss of me not to notice, and certainly not to mention, that some of the ancestors that she is finding out about are slave owners and misogynists, so it is not a lighthearted book. Oh, let me also mention one that I should have mentioned when I talked about books by writers I'd read, and that is the writer of The Go-Between, L.P. Hartley, has a novel coming out, and it's not even listed on, the new edition is not even listed yet on Goodreads, or it wasn't the last time I checked. It's called The Harness Room from 1971, and it is his most explicitly homoerotic novel. It's called The Harness Room. Need I say more? It is about a British dad who thinks his son is too much of a sissy boy, so he asks his chauffeur to toughen him up. And so those boxing or wrestling or whatever kind of sessions they happen in the harness room, and that just sounds really interesting. I can't remember the name of the publisher. My dear friend Leylâ subscribes to that publisher's newsletter, and she sent me the information, but it's not even available on that publisher's website yet. So I have secret, information thanks to Leylâ, and I'm going to put the new cover up here. Leylâ also told me about a reissue of a novel from 1921 by a Canadian female writer, Latchkey Ladies by Marjorie Grant. It's Marjorie Grant's first novel, opens in 1918 in the Mimosa Club, a women's hostel in central London. And it's all about working women in 1918 in London. That sounds fantastic. Out Front the Following Sea by Leah Angstman. It's a historical epic of a woman's survival in the wilderness at the time of the King William's War between the French and the English settlers in 1689 New England. Well, the historical aspect sounds interesting. I don't love that cover, but you're not supposed to judge a book that way, are you? I think it actually has already it's hot off the press. I'm going to include it here. Fiona and Jane by Jean Chen Ho, a debut novel. I think it's a debut novel about two young Taiwanese American women. It has all kinds of stuff about sexuality, identity, and friendship. And finally, here's a memoir from an Indigenous Canadian leader. My Privilege, My Responsibility, a memoir by Sheila North. In 2015, she became the Grand Chief of the Manitoba Kiwatanoe Okimakanak Nation, the first woman elected to that position. All right, so which ones sound interesting to you? Thanks for watching.